What is going on, everyone? It's Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here on today's episode, we are going to talk about both conference finals that are going on right now in the NBA. So that's going to be Hawks and Bucks and Suns Clippers. We're going to talk about each of those teams specifically and how they're doing in the finals. Now, let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
Yo, what is going on, everyone? It's Eric, your ranting co-host here. I've been thoroughly enjoying the playoffs this year, and that has continued. I'm definitely excited to see where it goes, and looking forward to providing you guys with some more coverage.
And what is going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and been feeling a little under the weather the past few days, but I'm still excited to be here and talk some more NBA. I haven't gotten to watch a whole lot of the games, but I'm excited that there's actually a few teams left in the playoffs that I can actually root for. Because normally we get to this point, it's a bunch of teams that I just don't really care for anymore. So I'm happy that for once there's actually teams I somewhat like left.
Yeah, definitely, dude. Around the hoop, as always, going to be basically the next month. We are an NBA podcast, so that is continuing. Obviously, this is the most important time of year for an NBA fan. So, like I said before, we're going to talk about both of the conference finals that are going on right now. Keep in mind, we are recording this on the night of Monday, the 28th. So, we do not know the end result of Game 5 between the Clippers and Suns. And
Clippers currently have a 1-point lead with 9 minutes left in the third.
Yeah, so it could go either way. The Suns could close it out tonight. The Clippers could force a Game 6 back in LA. We really don't know yet. You will know when you're listening to this, obviously, how it turned out, but we don't know it yet. And same with the other series. Right now, it's a 2-1 Milwaukee Bucks series lead, and they'll be playing Game 4 Tuesday night in Atlanta. So that's what we'll start off with first, guys, is talk about the East Finals here, Hawks and Bucks. Now, last week, the three of us, we all predicted the Bucks to win the series, and they have the series lead right now, so it's looking good for them. So on the Bucks aspect, I guess we'll start with them first. The kind of article that I read about today talking about the Bucks is titled Giannis Antetokounmpo sings Khris Middleton's praises after Game 3 heroics. Quote, I trust this guy to death. So I want to start with Connor. Do you think how would you rate Middleton's performances in the playoffs right now? And I know in the past you've been really critical on him and being more like, okay, we know Giannis is going to show up and get his numbers, but you've always sort of been doubting Middleton if he shows up or not. How do you think Middleton's been playing, and do you expect it to continue going forward?
I mean, he's been playing fairly decently so far in the playoffs. I was actually trying to pull up his recent game logs here, but
yeah.
I mean, he definitely still has his moments though, where it seems like he disappears. Like I think it was Game 1. I think it was because Game 2 was like obviously a huge domination for the Bucks. Like there was even a clip on YouTube I saw of like the most popular clip from that game was like Thanasis, however you pronounce his name, like dunking on someone, and like that was the most popular clip from that game. It's like, wow, okay. The Bucks won dominantly when Thanasis.
Giannis's brother.
Yeah, really. When Thanasis gets the most popular clip. But yeah, I mean, he's been playing fairly well. I mean, really, he has had a couple duds. I mean, more so against the Nets than against the Hawks. I mean, obviously, he played really good in Game 2. He played fantastically in Game 3. It's just you got to keep it up because I'm glad that Giannis trusts him to death because I still don't trust him to death. Like, it's always one of those situations where, he can have, I think he had a stretch in the Nets series where he had like 3 or 4 good games in a row. But then like come Game 7 time, remember, like he didn't play that good in Game 7. It was really like Giannis and the rest and Drew Holiday that really carried them through that Game 7. So, it's kind of like I'm sitting here waiting, like, when's the next time Middleton's going to have a bad game? Because if he does have a bad game, then, I mean, we saw what happened in game one. Like, it was close, but the Bucks lost in game one, and Middleton shot like 26% from the field, which is god awful. I think he was something like 0 of 8 from 3 or something as well. So, it's just like I'm waiting for. But so far, he's been good. I mean, the Hawks have still managed to, they somehow have a defensive strategy to contain Giannis. So, because Giannis didn't have, I mean, he still had like 30-some points in game 3, but he definitely didn't have his usual like dominant game. So, the Hawks have found a way to figure out Giannis. So, Middleton really can't have one of those games where he just disappears completely, because then they're going to have to rely on Drew Holiday, which I don't trust him either. So, it's just like, who knows?
So, Eric, because I see here, there's a quote from this article where they basically call him the team's closer. Like, how well do you trust him as a closer? Like, making, because in game one of their first game against the Heat, he obviously made that clutch shot to win the game. So, where do you trust him as a closer? You're obviously, it can't be Giannis, and I think because of his free throw struggles. So what's your trust rating like for him at the end of games?
Yeah, I'm like with Connor here. I mean, I would trust him as a closer more than I would Giannis or Drew Holiday. So I mean, I guess kind of then by default, like I have to trust him because he really is the best option. But I don't know if I still fully trust it, because he just, like Connor said, I mean, he has these nights where he gets inconsistent, where one night he's making everything and then the next night he's missing everything, and the problem is, it's like, which Khris Middleton are you going to get? I guess if I'm, the Bucks coach, what my mentality would have to be going into the game, is that as each individual game goes on, if it's close, play it by ear and see how the players are doing during the game. If Middleton's pretty hot most of the game and you need somebody to go out there and get you a buzzer beater, then get it to Middleton. But if it's like that game where he, like Connor was talking about, where he was 0 of 8 from 3 and only shot 26% from the field, I'm going to try to get it to Drew Holiday or somebody else. Like,
Maybe try and get an alley-oop to Giannis like the Suns did with Ayton.
Draw up a play like the Suns did with DeAndre Ayton against the Clippers, for Giannis. But Giannis is too concerning just because his jump shot's bad and he's, a very horrible free throw shooter. So unless you can come up with a play to get him in space to get an easy drive to the basket, which is hard to do in half-court sets, then Middleton probably is your best option. But like I said, if he's 0 of 8 from 3, though, and you need a 3-pointer, then get it to someone else.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I will say this for Middleton's sake, though. Although he may not be super trustworthy as a closer, get you that game-winning bucket, if you need someone to knock some free throws down at the end of the game to, kind of close out a game, then get it to him, because he's a fantastic free throw shooter. So
in that regard, yes. Yeah.
So he'll do that for you for sure.
Yeah. It always worries me when I watch him shoot, because they do a close up of his face and you just see the sweat pouring off of him onto the ball. You're like, man, is he gonna slip on his grip on the ball with all the sweat? And then you see once he shoots it and then it goes back down the other side, once the other team has the ball and is doing their offense, you see the NBA sweat man, the sweat wiper, run out on the court, swipe the free throw line to clean that liquid up. Connor, you know what I'm talking about based on your laughs.
That's just like the way that you're wording everything. You're just like, clean that liquid
up, dude.
I don't know what else to say, man. It is what it is.
Perforation or whatever.
It is what it is. Oh man, that was great.
But yeah, Connor, you've seen that before, right?
Oh,
remember we commented that on a game.
I'm pretty sure there was a game against it was one of those games against the Nets, I think, where literally pretty well every time he was, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure he was the reason for this too. There was a stretch where literally the dudes like the sweat moppers or whatever, they had to come out like 2 or 3 times in a row, and I'm pretty sure it was because like wherever Middleton was standing, like they had to go and like wipe it up.
I mean,
it was wild.
Does he
I was
not
like, what
use any towels when he's on the bench? Like, I'm just wondering.
I mean, I think it's kind of crazy that he's like always.
He's just a profuse sweater, I guess. You know,
like,
like
I know, yeah. I think it's wild that he sweats like way more than Giannis does, because Giannis has to really work most of the time.
Dude, I would say just real quick, unrelated thing, but who I used to see that all the time with back in the day was Shaq. I mean, they would like interview this dude before the game started, and if you like had just tuned in, you would have thought the game was over. Like he was sweating that bad before the game even started, dude. I was like, oh, I would not want to guard him.
Yeah. Okay. So, but a serious thought about Middleton for my point of view is, I think out of the playoffs, out of the 4 teams left in the playoffs, I think Middleton to me is like the most underrated player left, because on the Suns, they have their other guys, but it's Booker and Chris Paul that get most of the credit, and the other guys, Cameron Payne, Ayton, they have their games and stuff. The Hawks, it's really just Trae Young. Everybody loves Trae Young, but there's no real consistent second man on the Hawks. That's what we always talk about. The Clippers, they have some underrated players on their team like Terrence Mann, but Middleton is he's a former All-Star. He's a legit second option, and he's been playing like that. But I still feel like since Giannis, is a 2-time MVP, one of the best players in the game, that Middleton doesn't get enough credit for what he does for this team, because they wouldn't be here in the playoffs right now if it wasn't for him. In my opinion, out of everybody left, he's the like unsung hero, most least talked about superstar left, which is fascinating to think about. But that will conclude our talk about the Bucks and in this part of the matchup, and we'll turn it over to talk about the Hawks. So a big storyline that happened with the Hawks at the end of the game, Trae Young had an ankle injury that he came back in the game for at the end of game 3. Didn't play himself, and he really wasn't a big part of the offense. I think he was kind of just out there because it was the playoffs, and you desperately want to play in the game, so if you can play, you will play. But he just wasn't himself, and he didn't have the speed and explosiveness that you normally see from Trae Young, where he fakes a 3-point shot and all of a sudden he's down at the rim making a layup. Like that's one of the best parts about Trae Young's game, in my opinion. Yeah, he has incredible range, like Dame or Steph. Like he can make those super deep threes. But another thing about his game, in my opinion, that's so impressive is his speed, where you have to respect him from that far deep. But if you get up close to him, he'll just blow by you for a layup and then get fouled. And he's a very good free throw shooter. He just didn't have that at the end of the game. And, it says here he's had some injuries in the past. And this is obviously terrible timing for the Hawks. But I guess I'll start with Connor here on this. What do you make of this injury that he suffered? What do you think his status would be like for the next game? And kind of, is this it for the Hawks now? Like, do you think it's over? There's no chance?
I mean, it's one of those things that I definitely don't think he's going to be at 100%. I mean, they came out today because originally everyone just kind of thought it was like a sprained ankle, something like that, which obviously if it was a high ankle sprain, that's bad. But they came out and said it's like a bone bruise that he has. So I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that I'm sure he'll play just because, like you said, it's the playoffs. People will play when they have injuries just because, it's now or never. But honestly, if he looks anything like he did at the end of game 3, then it's over. Like, I would have no qualms or worries about saying that it's over if he plays anything like that, because like this isn't the Hawks are, I think we've talked about this a lot, how they don't have that consistent second option. Like, this isn't like the Nets where, oh, Harden and Kyrie are out, but they can still win because they still have KD, or, oh, the Clippers, Kawhi is hurt, but Paul George is keeping them in it. Like, they can still win, But, like, when Trae Young goes down with the Hawks, it's like, I mean, what are you going to say? Like, oh, they still have Bogdanovich. Like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
there's no one on that team that scares you anymore, especially with how good of a defensive team this Bucks team is. Like, the Hawks are screwed if Trae Young can't come back and play the way he can. Like, I know we were talking about this before the podcast, like, future scheduling issues and stuff, like, oh, what happens if this series goes 7 games and whatnot? Like, it'll go 5 games if Trae Young can't be back at 100%. So I don't know if you agree with me or not, Eric, on that subject.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And it's just a shame because obviously, the Bucks had that blowout win in game 2, but the Hawks managed to steal game 1, and they were leading in several chunks of the game 3 from what I saw. And it wasn't until after Trae Young went out with the injury, and then even though he came back not being the same, that then the Bucks took over the game. And I feel like if Trae Young was still 100%, maybe the Hawks even win that game and they're up 2-1, and but even if the Bucks had won that game, even if the Bucks had won with Trae Young being 100%, I mean, it would still be a fairly competitive looking series. But I mean, Connor hit it exactly on the head. I mean, there's no like a 1A and 1B type of deal with the Hawks. It's like Trae Young is the 1, and then everybody else is like a 2B or 3A type of player, like they have to have him. And if he's not 100%, then I have to agree that I think it's over, just because you saw the difference when he was out in game 3 when they had the lead, to then compared to how they ended up losing the lead. I feel like that's just how the rest of the series is going to go if Trae Young can't go, or if he's only like 75% or whatever. Do you think any differently, Zach, or what do you think?
No, I mean I think it's set in stone. I mean, even with him being healthy, I still would have been really shocked if the Hawks had won the series, just because of the way Trae Young is. And I mean, it's no fault of his because he's such a great offensive player, but typically his defense is really bad, because of his size. And then the Hawks, I feel like the Hawks are one of those teams that right now doesn't have any really good defensive players on the team. Like, Clint Capella maybe can get rebounds and stuff, but I just felt like with the matchup,
well, and also DeAndre Hunter is hurt. Like, that's one of their
Hunter's
best
hurt.
defensive players.
That's the thing, is Hunter's injury, and I just felt like the Bucks were gonna really own the boards in this series in a way that like Philly shockingly didn't. And that was a big reason why Philly ended up losing that series, is there were games that the Hawks, got their share of rebounds. And, it's important because looking at game 4 of the Suns and Clippers, how bad of a shooting that was, that's offensive rebounds and stuff that matters. That's one of the reasons why the Suns, I mean, won that game 4 is on the boards. So then you take away the big offensive threat of Trae Young in the 3-point game. Like I said, all those free throws he gets lots and lots of free throws. And he's really their best. The Hawks are a bad free throw shooting team minus Trae Young. That's something else that I've noticed. Like, obviously Clint Capella, he's no free throw shooter. And then Gallinari, I forgot about him. He's really good at free throws, but other than that, if you foul a guy, it seems like it's only the team is shooting like 65%. So with all those things going on, with the Bucks having home court in the series, it just seems like the Cinderella run is over for the Hawks with him being hurt now. And it's a shame because, like you said, Eric, they were actually competing in that game 3 with him healthy. So it's something that does, have a mark on the playoffs, in my opinion. And it's something too with all the stars being injured. I mean, it would have been I think a lot more fans would be interested, I think, with the stars in the game, seeing Kawhi, seeing a fully healthy Clippers team, seeing a fully healthy Nets team, how that would have been, and all the other teams that have had major stars get hurt for games or series. It's really unfortunate that's happened, but to answer the question, I think most people would agree it's probably over for the Hawks. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. I think they won a game in this, so they're not going to be swept no matter what. So that's good. And hey, if they somehow do win that game 4, the series is 2-2 no matter how bad it looks for them. So that's the thing with the Hawks is we've kind of thought that they were going to be eliminated earlier in the playoffs, and they didn't end up getting eliminated. So
not me.
yeah, I know Connor obviously his lock, but with Eric and I, we kind of wrote them off, and Eric was talking about how he would have locked the Sixers to win that series out of all the series that were happening in that second round. So yeah, it's sad for the Hawks' sake, but it just seems like it's the Bucks. It's made for the Bucks in the East anyways until they get to the finals, in my opinion. Unless the NBA starts actually enforcing the 10-second free throw rule, that could definitely change things if the referees start calling the 10 seconds, because it's him and his free throws, man. He takes 12 seconds every time. So let's go ahead now, guys. I feel like we've talked about the East teams pretty well enough now. So let's go and talk about the West series. And taking a look at my TV right now to give a better update. The Clippers have a little bit more of a lead now. It's an 8-point lead for me.
Yeah, 84-76 with
Yeah.
2:11 left in the third. So
there you go, Eric. There you go.
I got y'all.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's a 3-1 series lead right now for the Suns. And I guess let's talk about the Suns first here. The article on them that I found talked about Chris Paul, the Suns, and their chance to forge a lasting legacy. So I kind of want to talk with Eric first about this, since you've been more tuned in with this series, and this series has had some really good games. So Eric, just talk about the Suns, the key players on the Suns, that game 2 miracle that they had. Just how impressed have you been by them in this series, and do you think they close it out?
Well, actually, I mean, game 1, the Suns were amazing in that game. I mean, they played lights out. But since then, they've kind of struggled a bit, in my opinion. I mean, I feel like while they're up 3-1, I kind of feel like they're lucky to be up 3-1, because really game 2 and game 4, those games really could have gone either way. And I am a little concerned for the Suns, because while I've been big on the Clippers and picking them in the previous series and stuff, like I don't want them to get to the finals. I wanted to be the Suns. I really like Chris Paul. I have become more of a fan of Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton's been stepping up. It looks like he's not doing so great in tonight's game so far, but he's been big for them in the series.
Call him out, Eric. He'll do better.
Yeah, DeAndre Ayton, you got to play better. Devin Booker, you got to play better.
Eric's gonna rant on you.
Yeah, I will rant. No, I won't rant on them if they lose, but I will say I am concerned, just because other than game 1, Devin Booker's shooting has not been phenomenal, and then of course Chris Paul came back in game 3. And in games 3 and 4, he really didn't shoot the ball that well either. The Suns are really fortunate that in game 2 that Paul George missed those free throws at the end of the game. And then they're fortunate that in game 4, that while they were on a 5-minute streak of not being able to make a shot, that the Clippers also did the same thing. It's almost like both of these teams in this series are like trying to find ways to lose these games, which has been weird. So I don't know. I don't know if you guys feel that same way, but and then of course, like the Clippers are leading right now at the time of this recording, so there is a good chance when this episode comes out that this will still be a series. But I mean, if the Clippers do end up winning this game tonight, I mean, I feel like they still do have a chance to take the series. Like most of the time when a team goes up 3-1, you're like, oh, it's over. Like, especially if the Bucks go 3-1 on the Hawks with Trae Young not being healthy, oh, it's over. But when the Suns went up 3-1, while it's like, okay, they had the commanding position, I didn't feel like it was a wrap that the series was over, and so I am a little, like, I'm not 100% worried, but I'm like 6 out of 10 worried. I don't know.
Okay.
But what do you guys think? Do y'all agree, disagree?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it definitely seems like the Clippers are going to win this game 5 right now. But even if they do, I'm like 90% sure the Suns end up winning at least in 7. Like I don't see them losing again at home after this. I just don't. But I see what you say, and this is kind of what I said. I think it was last week, how these playoffs right now, they're so hard for me to predict because out of the players that are healthy and left, like the superstars, are all infamous chokers. Like, Giannis in the playoffs the past couple of years, he's still in. You have Chris Paul, who they talk about in this article how he is notorious for losing 3-1 series leads, and then you have Pandemic P, aka also known as Paul George. So,
You've been spitting out the comedy tonight.
Well, hey man, he's not looking like Pandemic P tonight. I will say that.
No, but that's the thing is, you never know when Pandemic P is going to show up. Like he's very inconsistent, and I really don't care what anybody says. I expect Paul George to fail in the clutch. I just do. See it with the free throws that proved it. Are we going to get that sort of Pandemic P, or are we going to get the one where he's playing like he is tonight? We just don't know. And that's the thing is, like, in my opinion, because there's no prove, if Kawhi was healthy, he's the best thing. He would be the player to look to and be like, okay, we've seen him get it done before. He's a Finals MVP. Like a player of Kawhi's status. There's nobody like that in these playoffs anymore. So because of that, I could think, yeah, the Suns, they could blow this because Chris Paul has blown it before. He's never been to the finals. He's been close a couple times, but never been. Devin Booker, he's never done anything before this season. DeAndre Ayton, he was looking like a mistake considering that Luka and Trae Young were drafted after him in the draft, and he went number 1 overall. So yeah, I could see the Suns losing this. But then you look at the team they're playing, the Clippers, and if Paul George has a Pandemic P performance in either game 6 or 7, I think it's over. So that's my reason why I think there's a better chance that happens for both those games. But and the fact that the Suns have home court advantage, I think that's a big thing too. I think I do think it could go 7 games, but if it does go 7 games, I'm taking the home team with the Suns. So that's where I stand on it. Connor, what about you? What do you think about Suns being vulnerable or not?
I mean, honestly, if I'm looking at this, I'm actually feeling really good if I'm the Bucks, because really, it's been really interesting to me watching these playoffs in the sense that this is the first time, I think, in a really long time where I don't think the West has the best chance to win the finals, because literally all of these teams that have, like, obviously a lot of them have been eliminated by now, but like they've all looked vulnerable. Like the Lakers looked really vulnerable. The Jazz were obviously very vulnerable. And then, now you've got the Clippers, who honestly, I don't know how they've managed to get this far given some of the games that they've played. And, and obviously the Suns look vulnerable. The, what was it? The Nuggets obviously looked very vulnerable when they got swept. Like, I don't know. I just feel good if I'm the East right now. I mean, obviously the Hawks are probably out of it, like we mentioned before. But if I'm the Bucks, I'm thinking like, man, like these West teams don't look like the powerhouses that they're supposed to look like. Because, it's wild seeing the Suns because, I mean, like you said, I do still expect the Suns to hold on and win this. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, just because, again, like I said, I don't know how the Clippers have gotten this far, but it's crazy to me to think that, like, especially right now, like they're down by 11 at home right now in a game where they could, punch their ticket to the NBA Finals. And I mean, Devin Booker's playing pretty good, but like the rest of the team, like I wouldn't say they're playing bad per se, but like Ayton and Chris Paul have both been very underwhelming. Jay Crowder's been really cold tonight. Like, there's just a lot of, and obviously, like, they're letting Paul George, like, destroy them when it's like, okay, how is it that, if you're going to, but then if they contain Paul George, then they're somehow letting, like, Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson shoot all over them. So, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins, of all people, has, like, double-digit points right now. So I don't know. It's really crazy to see, but I do agree. I don't see the Suns losing 3 games in a row. They'll find a way, whether it's on the road in LA or back home in Game 7 in Phoenix. They'll find a way to win. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Like you said, the chokers going against each other. Like if it ends up being like Suns and Bucks, like who's going to make the mistakes first? Is it going to be Chris Paul or is it going to be Giannis? Who knows? But the Suns really got to pull their head out of their rear ends right now because it's not going to look good at all if the Clippers come back and win, because this is probably, honestly, for a lot of people, this could be Chris Paul's last chance to win an NBA championship because obviously given his age and, if he starts to regress at all, it's not like, he's going to be able to get traded to like another contender or anything because he still has that really ridiculous contract. So, it could be his last chance, and if the Suns blow it like this, then Chris Paul, it's hard to build a legacy. I don't know for him because if you look at everything else in his career, like you'd be like Hall of Famer easily. But the fact that he's never won a championship in a sport like the NBA, because I think championships mean more in the NBA than they do in a lot of other sports. Like I think if you look at baseball or hockey or football, like especially football, football is a highly, like, you got to have a really good team around you most of the time to win anything. I mean, you look at, obviously the debate, there's all the Tom Brady's the GOAT and everything, but you look, the Patriots always had a fantastic team around him. He never had a situation where he had to carry like a really terrible team and went ahead and won the Super Bowl. Whereas, like, but you can do that in the NBA. Like, we saw how LeBron carried the Cavs. Like, obviously, they didn't win that year because the Warriors were just completely stacked. But you can do that in the NBA where if you have, like, 1 or 2 good players, they can carry a pretty mediocre team to a championship. I mean, you could argue the Lakers did that last year. The rest of the team behind AD and LeBron really wasn't that fantastic. So, I don't know. It's really important for Chris Paul that he can win a championship because who knows what his legacy will be if he never can win one.
Yeah, if he doesn't,
plus he hasn't even been in the finals yet. It's not even like, because like with LeBron, obviously he's been to the finals a ton of times, but even though he's lost 6 of them, he has won 4 and he's been in the finals a buttload of times. But like Chris Paul in his whole career has never even been to the finals yet.
Yeah, and I know he's played in the West.
He's been on some pretty good teams too. Like like some of those Clippers teams were good. Some of the Rockets teams were good. Now the Suns team is pretty good. So, he's had the only one I don't blame him was when he had a hamstring injury against the Warriors when they were up 3-2, and then he had the hamstring injury and couldn't play. Like, so like that one. I obviously give him because he was actually playing really well in that series before that. So I give him a pass for that one. But like, you had a lot of other ones, man, where it's like, where did Chris Paul go? Like, even in Game 7 with the Thunder last year against the Rockets in the first round, like, he had some big buckets in Game 6 and helped us force a Game 7. But then in Game 7, it was like, where'd you go, Chris? He kind of vanished into thin air on that one.
He went to shoot a State Farm commercial.
Yeah, he took Kyle Lowry off the milk carton and replaced himself on there or something.
What happened is he turned into a basketball.
Oh yeah. or a cardboard cutout.
You're welcome, State Farm. You can DM me on Twitter, and I'll tell you where to mail the check for that.
Talk about royalties,
Well,
Jake from State Farm.
You might take the check back because State Farm. I want to say those commercials are pretty trash, but
oh, okay.
Whoa, could have been bringing in some serious cash, and Eric just ruined it for us.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
Well, look, let me just help your writers out. You can't have him say he turns into a basketball when he just disappears and then the basketball he's holding drops to the ground. He didn't actually even turn into a basketball. Lame. Anyway, I'm off subject again. I digress.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, one last thing about the Khris, or maybe just more so the Suns thing I want to hear from Eric on is,
okay,
let's say, because you're out of all three of us, you're the one that's like most concerned for the Suns' chances in this playoff. So if what you talked about ends up happening and they do blow the series lead and the Clippers win in 7 games, is that gonna like put the Suns back a few notches? Like, is this gonna be like their best chance, and then we're gonna be like, oh, remember the Suns in 2021? Remember how good they were, because for the next 5 years they never made it again. Do you see that happening, or do you think there's still a chance for them?
I think there's still a chance, just because of, in the sense that, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton are both still pretty young. I mean, and this is their first time,
under 25. They're both under 25.
It's not like they've been in this position 3 or 4 times and then never made it. Like, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, they're done. But they still have a chance. And I've heard Chris Paul wants to potentially like work out his contract a little bit to make it a little more friendlier on the team and kind of stretch it out over more years or something, so that he can, keep playing for them and then also play longer. So if that happens, and they keep that core together, as long as, Chris Paul doesn't regress, which could happen because of his age. But if he doesn't regress, then I still think they have a chance. But one thing that like we haven't talked about yet with the Suns, and unfortunately I do hate to say this, but they've been the biggest benefactor of the superstar injuries and stuff that we've been talking about. Because
you're right.
If you look in that Lakers series, like while they won the first game, like AD torched them in games 2 and 3, and it looked like the Lakers were on a clear path to beating them. And then of course AD got hurt, and then that series flipped around. And then of course in the Nuggets series, while they did beat the Blazers, they were without Jamal Murray in that series, which, obviously hurt them, not having their, number 2 option behind Jokic. Like, Jokic was having to do everything on offense. And then now with the Clippers, they haven't had to play a single game, against Kawhi Leonard. They've been going strictly just against Paul George basically this whole time. And really, they could have, like I said, they could have lost games 2 and 4. That, like, this series could easily be 3-1 the other way around. So, and I know, like y'all said, the Suns, like, they could still, like, they get the home court again in Game 7 if they do lose tonight, and if they lose Game 6. But I would be worried for them in that Game 7, just because while yes, they would be at home in that game, if that situation does happen, that's going to mean the Clippers have won 2 games in a row, though, and they're going to have the momentum. So I don't know, man, but Devin Booker's going to have to get it together, because like he's been doing like okay in this game, it looks like, but his shooting has been inconsistent after that first game, and that's what's hurting them. If he has like a lights out performance again, then I think they win, no problem. But the fact that they've been, it seems like games 2 through now 5, they've kind of struggled. Like, I am concerned for them. But if they do lose, back to Zach's question though, then like if they were to somehow choke this series, I don't think it's over for them. But this is really a top tier chance for them, though, because of all the fortunate things that they've had happen with teams that they played with injuries and stuff. They may not get, this is like a golden ticket right now, like they could still get there again, but it's going to be a lot harder for them in the future. Whereas like this is their best chance right now. Like they've got a golden ticket right here, and they need to punch that thing.
I'm just saying this because for the West the past couple of years, like it's been the Warriors and the Lakers really last year. And you look at the teams that lose to the Warriors and Lakers, like remember when the Rockets did, they never came back. The Blazers, they made
Thunder
it.
never
The
came
Blazers
back.
made it to the Western Conference Finals. They didn't make it back. Thunder didn't make it back. Nuggets last year didn't make it back. I mean, it's just recent history. Unless you're one of those like Warriors or that Lakers team last year.
Yeah, I guess my thing is that while with the Warriors, Klay Thompson's going to come back. They're going to have him back, obviously, but
yeah.
Draymond Green sucks offensively, and he's regressed big time offensively. And then there's no telling if Klay's even going to be the same player. I mean, he's coming off.
I'm not saying that the Warriors are going back to the finals. I'm just saying
but I'm just laying down like what next year could look like for the Suns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, there's no telling if Klay's even going to be the same player. And then with the Lakers, I mean, while they're a great team, I mean, you saw how many different players on their team got hurt this year. And who knows if they're going to be the same, because LeBron's age is obviously catching up to him. And while he's still getting the numbers and everything, like this is now
double.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My favorite thing to talk about. But this is now 2 of the last 3 seasons where he's had a big injury and missed time. And while AD stayed healthy last year and they won the championship, that was almost like an anomaly. Like he almost never stays healthy for a full season. So I do, injury concerns for the Lakers, obviously. And then some of these other teams, like Portland's going to have a new coach now, and who knows what they're going to be like. And I'm worried about the Jazz, like I feel like this was their kind of like last chance kind of deal, because like I feel like they need to make some moves. So while the Suns, I think even if they lose this, like they're still going to have their young core. Chris Paul will probably still be there. Like, so if they can even maybe just make like one other move to get like one other piece or something, like I think the Suns could easily get back into next year. But with all the injuries and everything, they've had fortunate in their favor this year. Like they do need, I don't think it's their last chance, but it is a big chance and they need it.
Yeah, and
if that makes sense.
I don't know if you guys are taking a look up at your TVs or not, but they are coming back to this game too. Real close, 7 minutes, 4-point game. Paul George just had a terrible foul on after a free throw. Shoved the guy to the ground. I don't know why.
He's pulling a Draymond. He's pulling a Draymond is what's happening.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the Clippers now, guys. So, obviously in this game 4, this article is written after game 4, and they talk about, it says here, I thought the start of this article was funny. It says, when a team loses an 84-80 decision, as the Clippers did Saturday night, the list of regrets is long. Most will point to their inability to make timed free throws or the 13 straight possessions in the fourth quarter when both teams failed to change a 71-70 score. So talks about fatigue here and how physical the series has been. You don't have Kawhi, and then also too something that the article doesn't talk about that I kind of want to ask Eric about is we saw, I think it was in game 3 maybe, where the Clippers went on a big run, and then the camera points to Kawhi Leonard up in the stands, and he's like emotionless. Obviously, that's normal for Kawhi to be emotionless. But Eric, is there like, Kawhi is obviously a weird person. I mean, you know him. I know you know Kawhi.
Yeah,
but
I've been able to bring him onto the show.
Yeah,
a couple times,
so you know him better than anybody. But with him sitting up in the stands and not down with his team on the bench, like I've just never seen. That's just a weird thing. Like I don't know. Like it's like he's a fan up in the stands there. Like why isn't he with the team, do you think? And is that a sign of things to come in free agency? Is that him distancing himself from the team? Like, do you make that conclusion based off that, or is it just Kawhi being weird? Is this just a weird thing with him not being with the team down in the game and like giving advice to the teammates? Because like, there's nothing. If he sees something, he can't really talk to the team up there. Like, you would want him to be down on the bench to give his input and leadership. I mean, I know he's not known for a leader, but what do you make of that?
I mean, while obviously I do know Kawhi the best out of all four of us on the panel, but
Hey. Mega Miss League.
But yeah, man, I don't honestly, man, I have no idea. I mean, it's really because to me it would seem like looking at the way this team is playing without him, you would think that he would want to come back and continue to be a part
Apparently,
of this team.
he hasn't like tried at all to come back. I don't think he's like gonna try and come back. From what it sounds like, he hasn't like picked up a basketball in weeks.
Man, I don't know, dude.
I think he honestly probably has an ACL tear. I think they're not saying it, but I think he probably has an ACL tear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly that's going to look bad on the Clippers though if it suddenly comes out after they're out of the playoffs, or even if they went after the season's over. Like if he does have a torn ACL, because like they can diagnose that within the same day of the injury. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll get fined for
So
not.
yeah, that'd be that. You know, but that'll be a bad look on them if that does end up being what his injury is. But I don't know, man. I mean, maybe he does one out, and you know, we've seen this before where he had his disagreements with San Antonio and he wanted out of there, and then he got traded to Toronto, and even though they won the title, he didn't want to stay there. Uh, you know, he's a great player and everything, but for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to be a super loyal player. So I don't know. I don't know why he would want out, because with that being like, you know, his home area, and he always wanted to play for a Los Angeles team and all that. I don't know why he would, but it's a very weird situation because, like you said, if I'm on the Clippers, you know, with his expertise of the game and being the best player on the team, like I would want him down there. Like if he sees something that we could exploit, you know, he can tell us, or
Yeah.
you know, if he has something that he thinks we should try differently, like he can, you know, take his input. Like I would want that, but you know, he's just sitting up there, and obviously he's never really been a person to show much emotion. But like when your team was down by like, you know, almost 20 points, and then you got it back down to like a 6-point game, like, and the fans are just going crazy. How do you not even smile at least? Like, I mean, dang, dude. When I've had teams or watching games where like my team was losing and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like we're getting beat. But then like we go on a run, like I'm like yelling at my TV. I'm so excited. Or if I'm at the game, like I'm jumping up and down with everybody. Like I'm not just sitting there like, wow, you know.
Mega Miss League. You make that one.
Yeah, even like the commentators had to like poke fun at Kawhi at that when they got it down to 6, and like it just cut to him and he was just sitting there and he was like, Kawhi Leonard going crazy. Like he was just sitting there like, I don't know, man. Maybe he is gonna leave. I don't know. At this point I wouldn't be surprised, but I guess going into the season I would have been surprised, but because you know he got the coaching change he wanted and all that, but maybe he just has maybe he just doesn't feel confidently about Paul George and doesn't want to play with him anymore. I don't know, but I thought they were friends, so this whole thing is just crazy. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear Connor's thoughts on this situation.
I mean, you guys pretty much nailed everything on the head with it. I mean, it would be very interesting to see. I mean, my question for him, I guess, would be if he does want out, then like, where does he want to go? Like, I mean, I'm sure obviously there's a lot of teams out there that'll pay top dollar for him, but you know, like, where would he want to go? Is there another? I mean, would he be able to do kind of like what he did in LA? Because obviously, you know, when he went to the Clippers, he was able to bring Paul George there. Is there like another player that he wants to try and team up with out there? I mean, obviously there's no rumors or anything, but you know, it would just be really interesting. It would certainly, you know, because right now this is unfortunately looking like a pretty boring free agent season, you know, that's coming up here because there's a lot of all of the big names, you know, signed long-term deals and all this other stuff. Like I'm pretty sure the like top free agent right now that's supposed to be happening for this next season is like Kyle Lowry. So
what?
So like that would turn the free agent market like completely on its head if Kawhi like, you know, turned down his player option and decided to leave LA. So I mean, it's funny because I mean, it could be that some of these places that think that he is going to, because I have seen some things about like top free agents, and you know they are mentioning Kawhi Leonard in them. And, because I think it's one of those situations too, like if he really wanted to stay, then, why haven't we heard anything about like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to, take that player option, like for sure, like I'm staying, especially the way that, we're getting close to the end of the season. And with the way that COVID is, shifted everything on its head, like free agency is coming up here not too long from now.
Yeah.
So I would have thought that we would have heard something by now on what his plans were. I mean, maybe he's just trying to keep to himself.
I'll say this. He is the most secretive superstar there is in the league. Like, he does not tell anybody. The only person who knows what he's going to do is like his uncle Dennis. That's it. He doesn't have, you know how some of these people, they have like a whole like following. They have like a whole squad of like a social media manager and like agent and all these sort of things. He just has his uncle Dennis, and they keep their lips zipped. So that's why we haven't heard anything, because he has his lips zipped. Remember his free agency about the Clippers? Nobody was saying the Clippers. Nobody's saying that, and then he went to the Clippers.
Except for you,
except for me. But I don't have any inside source. I'm not like Eric, but
yeah. You say
come on, Eric.
You say
cousin Eric.
Well, but even like Zach said though, it's just Uncle Dennis, because he doesn't tell me this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, because I wouldn't have said I don't know otherwise. But
yeah.
You wouldn't have picked him to go back to Toronto or whatever you picked him for that season.
I thought he would stay there. I'm like, okay, you just won a championship. Like, it would make sense. But, then he did the whole LA thing and they got Paul George and all that. But I have heard, like, if he were to leave, it seems like Miami is the top target that I'm hearing of where he would go. He would go to team up with Jimmy Butler, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, if he loves LA so much as he, said he does and wanted to play for them so badly, like, I don't see why he would leave. But
I mean, I'm also kind of surprised he would want to go to Miami because, like, I mean, I know obviously, like, they still have Jimmy Butler and Adebayo, but like the rest of the Heat is like in shambles right now. After what happened at the end of this season, so that would be an interesting destination, I guess.
Also too, like, you got to think like they're one of the teams that has the cap space for him. Like, that's another thing too, is like,
I mean, if the Hornets want to make it happen, like, we got cap space.
Yeah.
The Thunder, we probably got like 90 million. The
playoff teams with cap space, guys.
the only person we're paying.
I mean, technically, the Hornets were a play-in team. So.
But also too, I think something like I feel like Kawhi is gonna be one of these players that retires like out of the blue, like way early into his prime. Like, I don't see him playing another like 10 seasons. I don't know if you guys
like a Barry Sanders type, Calvin Johnson type sort of situation.
I do, because he's already got. I mean, he has already 2 championships, so it's not like he's a Chris Paul like trying to play till 40 to win a ring. Like, do you agree with that? Like, do you see him being like one of these guys who's like, okay, I'm done with basketball? Like,
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
I see that.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it just seems like he's not, when you think about some of these superstars in the NBA, like, people like LeBron and like Chris Paul and Giannis, and like they seem like they're completely and wholly dedicated to basketball. Like, this is their life. Obviously, like you said, Kawhi is a very secretive person, but it seems like to me, like, whenever I get, look at him and get vibes from him and stuff, like, it doesn't seem like this is his life, as if like, he has something else that he could be doing or whatever, but he's just kind of like playing basketball for fun. And then it's like, okay,
he's
whenever
good at it. Like,
and it's like whenever he doesn't feel like it anymore, he just be like, oh, okay, I'm done. Like, whatever. It's not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say he's unique, man. There's nobody of his caliber in the game that's at all I've ever seen like him, and probably ever will be. But that's gonna wrap up our Kawhi Leonard talk, guys, for the Clippers. Obviously he's not even playing in the playoffs, but we had to talk about him for other reasons. But yeah, that's gonna wrap this episode up, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed listening to our thoughts on all 4 of these teams left in the playoffs. Hopefully you enjoy the episode, and we will be back next week, hopefully doing a NBA Finals preview, and that will be a lot of fun. And until then, remember, be clutch.
Bye.
And just to update you real quick before I say peace, the Clippers are up 112-98 with 3:20 left in the game. So most likely there will be a game 6. Peace.